Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Surprisingly enough, over the past couple of months, the popularity of Rebirth gameplay here in Warzone has honestly skyrocketed. It seems like when Rebirth first came out, it really wasn't all that popular. Like Verdansk was definitely the favorite there, but over time, maybe it's because we haven't seen many changes on Verdansk really ever since it was introduced. Yeah, Verdansk 84 is a thing, but it's really not all that different, right? Rebirth, on the other hand, provides a really unique twist on gameplay where it's a lot more action-packed, it's a lot faster, it's easier to get into, and I would say a little bit more casual in some cases than regular Verdansk. And for those reasons, the popularity, like I said, has really increased over time, and today I wanted to specifically look at some of the best loadouts to be using if you are an avid Rebirth player. So as we go through it all, if you enjoyed the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Seriously would be appreciated. And of course, if you're new here or if you have not already subscribed, this is the place to be for everything going on in COD. News, updates, loadouts, tips, it is all right here every single day. Also, quick shout out to Gamer Advantage. If you guys are planning on grinding out Vanguard, leveling up weapons, or grinding Warzone once the integration takes place, and you're looking at screens all day, blue light glasses from Gamer Advantage are for you. I love mine. I wear them every single day. They offer prescription or regular lenses, and Code WARZONE gets you a nice little discount at checkout. Now, when it comes to Rebirth, something I love about it is the fact that there's just more viable weapons to use on this map in specific, just because of how it plays with all the close quarters and action and everything going on there. But the first setup I'm using, of course, is going to be the XM4 and the Cold War MP5. The XM4 is just so reliable, great for close range, medium range, long range. It's got you covered in pretty much every type of fight. And the Cold War MP5 is an absolute phenom for close range engagements. So we'll break down the attachments for those in just a second, but as far as the perks go and equipment goes, this is the same on every single one of my classes for Rebirth, and honestly Verdansk as well. Double time overkill amped. If I can get that second free loadout, I'll probably swap out overkill for tempered in most cases. Then alongside that, I do use the throwing knife so I can get quick and easy finishes. That's always super crucial. If you're able to land those, you get the ping on the mini map for where that enemy team is, and it's just way easier than using bullets. And I also do use a stun for my personal preference as well. Now, when it comes to the XM4, the setup here is pretty similar to what I've got going on over on Verdansk. I'm going agency suppressor, and I am going to go task force barrel just for the best range and control. It's going to have that medium and long range capability if I need it. Most of the fights are in that mid-range area, so this will work just fine for that. Honestly, I don't feel like you absolutely need an underbarrel in this case, just because you're not fighting at, 100 plus meters all the time, so it's not super necessary, just because the recoil really is not all that bad. So we're not going to be using an attachment there. Instead, I'm going for the 3x optic. As always, I'm going to go ahead and rock the deep sea reticle. It comes from the Dockside Killer bundle if you haven't seen that one before. As far as the magazine goes, I don't feel like you need the full 60 here like you do on Verdansk. 45 works just fine, just because of how Rebirth works and how it functions with the gunfights, so you don't need a huge amount of ammo, and you don't need to be slowed down by it either. And then lastly, I'll go for the Raider stock in most cases, get some better mobility out of that, and in general, you just have a very aggressive rifle setup. And then for the Cold War MP5, this pretty much is the go-to setup for it as is. We're going agency suppressor, no barrel here because task force doesn't really give you any major advantages. Instead, we're going for the Tiger Team Spotlight. Of course, we also go for the Bruiser Grip, get some insane mobility out of that. I also go for the 50-round drum, then finally the Raider stock as well. The go-to Cold War MP5 setup here. Nothing differs between this or Verdansk, but it's going to fry up close. 0 to 10 meters, it's almost unbeatable. Now, the next weapon combination is going to be the AK, the Cold War AK, I should say, then also the OTS. Two more weapons that have insane TTKs. Cold War AK is one of the best rifles, arguably the #1 rifle in the entire game. And the OTS is pretty much just like the Cold War MP5. Slight differences here and there in terms of the exact numbers, but they're pretty much neck and neck in every single aspect in terms of TTK, mobility, all that stuff. So you can't go wrong with these. So much fun to run together. The AK setup here versus Verdansk is going to be a little bit different just because you don't need to run the full long range setup like you would on Verdansk. We're still going to be going Groove Suppressor. For the barrel, you can get away with running Liberator here just because RPK is going to slow you down a little bit more. Obviously, it's Rebirth, so it's a little bit more hectic. You don't always want that huge slowdown. You could use either or. Like if you're fully set on using your AK for medium and long range only, go ahead, run the RPK barrel. It's all good there. But Liberator honestly works just fine specifically for Rebirth. Now, you do still need the Spetsnaz grip, in my opinion, to really minimize that recoil. 45-round mag, though, also works again here. And, of course, we're going to go for the 3x optic once more. So, really, the only main difference here, Rebirth versus Verdansk, is going to be Liberator or Spetsnaz RPK. And Liberator really is totally sufficient here, in my opinion. And then, if we go over to the OTS, just like the Cold War MP5, this is going to be the basic copy and paste setup that we've been running forever. Grew Suppressor, Task Force Barrel. I also rock the 40 round fast mag. I'm gonna go ahead and use the Serpent Wrap as well. And then finally, I really haven't been using Tiger Team all that much on the OTS lately, just because it got slightly nerfed a little while back with Season 6. So it's not like an absolutely mandatory setup now, right, to run this Tiger Team. You could if you wanted to, and you get great mobility out of it, but the mobility as is already pretty good. So I actually go ahead and rock the Skeletal Stock and get a slightly better Sprintifier and ADS walking speed with that, which is pretty nice. So all around, you can't really go wrong, Skeletal or Tiger Team, but this is my go-to setup as of lately. Now, I do have two different sniping setups that I sort of rotate for Rebirth. Sniping on Rebirth is honestly a ton of fun, especially if you play it aggressive and you're really good, you know, with aggressive sniping. It is so satisfying. So first up, I got the Swiss and the PPSH. PPSH is great for sniper support. Its range, especially for a sub, is very impressive. And of course, the Swiss is pretty much tied with the Kar for being the best sniper in the game in most cases. So here we're obviously going for the basic Swiss setup. Nothing really differs between this and Verdansk, if I'm being honest. Grew Suppressor and Combat Recon Barrel for the best range and velocity possible. We do also use the 5mm laser. This acts as the tac laser. I don't use an optic here because I really like the base scope and the base optic that the Swiss has as is and by default. So instead I go for the Bruiser Grip and I get some better mobility for that. It's great for Rebirth too because you can rush around with this and be a little bit more aggressive. Then finally, I also go for the Airborne Elastic Wrap and get some better ADS. You could also go Serpent Wrap too if you wanted. It has less cons. Either or there is going to work just fine though. And overall, it's a really, really good sniper setup. And then for the PPSH, again, it's going to be the copy and paste setup. Grew and Task Force as always. I do use Tiger Team in this case just because it's really satisfying to run around with this thing at hyper speed. What I love about the PPSH, especially for Rebirth, is that 71 round drum, because you don't always have to use that throwing knife because you have so much ammo here. You can definitely insta finish with this and not have to worry about running out of ammo and reloading and having that get you killed. You can just keep spraying and praying and you're all good to go, right? And then lastly, we do go for the Raider stock once again. Like I said, basic copy and paste Cold War setup. Now, the other sniper setup I run is the Kar and the Mac10. Just like the PPSH, the Mac10 has a really good damage drop-off range for being a sub, and it's honestly, it's the Mac. What else do I got to say about it? It's an absolute beast. Now, you could also switch those around and run the Mac with a Swiss and run the Mac and Cheese setup, which is my personal favorite probably for sniping in the game. But for the sake of this video, obviously Kar Mac10, you could switch around whatever you wanted to, wherever you wanted to with any of these primaries and secondaries. But both these weapons pretty much behave the exact same as the Swiss and the PPSH setup, so can't go wrong with either of these. For the Kar, we're going, obviously, monolithic suppressor. We go for the 27.6-inch barrel on here as well. I go for the tac laser for that better ADS speed primarily. Unfortunately, here it comes based with the iron sight, so you got to use a sniper scope or maybe even the variable zoom scope, but sniper scope for me is like the go-to. That's what I'm comfortable with. I also do use the cross-thread reticle is my go-to. It's my personal preference in terms of favorite there. And then lastly, I pretty much always go for the sport comb stock and get a better ADS out of that. If you wanted to, you could go for something like sleight of hand though. That way you do get that reload off quicker because it's a lot slower than the Swiss is. But really, I go for speed and aggression here just because it is Rebirth. So sport comb stock, I think, is the way to go. And then for the Mac10, you're never gonna guess this, but it is in fact the copy and paste Cold War SMG setup. Like always, hopefully with Vanguard we get some alternative setups that are a little bit more fun to use than just the same 5 attachments on pretty much every close range weapon. But Agency, Task Force, Tiger Team, the 53 round drum, and in this case the Raider stock is going on there too. And then lastly, loadout number 5 is going to be the EM2 and the MWMP5. The EM2 is an absolute beast when it comes to power. Like, this thing does hit like a truck. It's great, especially past like 40 meters. 40 to like 100, honestly, is like the prime range for this thing because its TTK is so good there. And the MWMP5 is the MWMP5 still. It fries, it has great hip fire accuracy, so you can just run around with this thing up close and melt everyone. Now for the EM2 here, I'm going Agency. In this case, I do go for Task Force over Ranger just because the recoil here is a lot more noticeable than on any other weapon here. So while it is a little bit slower, Task Force I feel like is worth running to really help you control the weapon, and same deal with the Field Agent grip here as well. Of course, you got to go for that larger magazine. 40 is totally sufficient here. Then lastly, I do go for an optic. The base reticle on this gun is just not it. I'm not a fan of it whatsoever. It looks weird, it feels weird. 3x optic is my personal preference, and I think the way to go there. Then for the MWMP5, it's a no-brainer here. Monolithic integral suppressor. We're obviously going for the Merc foregrip, the 45 round mags. I like to go for sleight of hand just so I can play ultra aggressive with it. Then lastly, I go for the collapsible stock and I get some better movement out of that. The go-to MP5 setup for what feels like forever now, but it still works, especially here on Rebirth Island. So yeah, that said, those are my top 5 loadouts for Rebirth in the current meta, and that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. If it did, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. But yeah, that's going to wrap things up. Until next time, guys, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.